नमः। हबे हबे बोलो से नमः। अपराधागुची शुद्ध नामे रुचि कृपा बले हबे हृदये संचार। अपराधागुची शुद्ध नामे रुचि कृपा बोले हबे हृदये संचार। ऋणादिका हीना हबे निज मानी सहिष्णुता गुणा हृदये ते आनी। सकले मनादा अपनी आमानी होए आस्वादी भो नाम रस सार। धन जन आरा पवित्र सुंदरी बोली भोना चाही देहो सुखकारी। जन्मे जन्मे दाओ ओहे गौरा हरी आहै तू की भक्ति चरणे तो मार। कोरिते श्री कृष्ण नाम उच्चारण पुलकित देहो गदगद बचनाम। बाईपर्णीय बेपथो हबे संघटना निरंतर नेत्रे बभया श्रुधार। कभे नवद्वीपे सुरधुनि ताटे गौर नित्यानंदा बोली निष्कपटे। नाचिया गाइया बेराई बो चूटे बातुलेर प्रायचर्या भीचार। कबे नित्यानंदा मोरे कोरिदोया चाराई भे मोरा विषये रमाया। दिया मोरे निजा चरणे रचाया नामे रहते ते दिबे अधिकार। इन्हीं बोलुती बो हरि नाम रसाम। नाम रसे मती होई भो विबशा रासे रसिका शरण परसा। कोरिया मोझी बोरा से आनी बार कबे जीवे दोया कोई बेउ दोया। निज सुख भूली सुदिन हृदया भक्ति विनोदा कोरिया भिनोया। श्री आज्ञा तहला गोरिबे प्रचार। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Gauranitai, 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 Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. हरे कृष्णा हरि नाम संकीर्तन महायज्ञ की जय, कलयुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय, श्री श्री राधा श्याम सुंदर भगवान की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरे हरि बोल। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय, ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय, ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं, देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया, भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। सर्वशास्त्राब्धि पीयूष सर्ववेदैकसत्फला, सर्वसिद्धान्तरत्नाढ्य सर्वलोकैकदृक्प्रदा, सर्वभागवत प्राण श्रीमद्भागवत प्रभो। कलिध्वान्तोदितादित्य श्रीकृष्ण परिवर्तिता, परमानंद पाठाय प्रेमावर्षक्षरायते, सर्वदा सर्वसेव्याय श्रीकृष्णाय नमोस्तुते। मदेकबन्धो मत्संगी मद्गुरो मन्महादना, मन्निष्ठारक मद्भाग्य मदानंदा नमोस्तुते। असाधु साधु तादायन् अति नीचो जताकरा, हानामुञ्चा कदाचिन्मां प्रेम्णा हृत्कण्ठयोस्फुरा। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे, निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्णा चैतन्या प्रभु नित्यानंदा, श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्त वृंदा। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So it's a pleasure to be in the assembly of Vaishnavas to discuss Srimad Bhagavatam. I'm very happy to be in the association of such devotees. I was going to go back home to get ready for the session, but our auditors consumed my whole day and I couldn't step out, so I'm logging in from my office. Told no one to enter here, so I'm not so properly dressed as a speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam, so kindly excuse me because it is not to take this service lightly, but at the same time was definitely beyond my control that I had to stay back. So with all your blessings and prayers, I hope I will do something for your pleasure as well as for my learning. So we are going to discuss a very interesting section from Srimad Bhagavatam. As I had mentioned in my earlier sessions, I find it extremely difficult to kind of restrict a particular shloka or a particular context in one session. Maybe it is my weakness, but the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam, as Srila Prabhupada writes, even if somebody comes in contact with the Srimad Bhagavatam, just one part of the verse, even one syllable of the verse, so I mean, it is definitely purifying. It's definitely, wonderful. So that way, whatever we are going to learn, it may not be exhaustive, it may not be complete, but it definitely, will add some learning sense. As they say, when you go to a dham, when you go to a holy place, we may not be able to see the holy place by our naked eye. We may not be able to see the holy place in one visit. So probably we may have to keep visiting again and again. First to even physically in our own eyes to see all the places. Then we have to make more and more visits to intellectually understand what is dham. Then we have to make more and more visits to develop consciousness so that we can associate with dham. Then we have to make further more visits to then associate with the self-realized soul in the dham, recognize them that they are self-realized soul, and several more visits are needed to get ourselves transformed. So Srimad Bhagavatam is also such an experience. When we associate with devotees, when we associate with Srimad Bhagavatam, we may have to do it again and again. So even if you are kind of going to be incomplete or not exhaustive, that is how it has been designed. So we'll have to enjoy that incompleteness so that we can come back to it to go more deeper, to come back to it again, to go more further deeper, to come back to it more and more, so that the more we come back to Srimad Bhagavatam, as we just prayed, Madhyeka Bandho Matsangi Madguru Mad Mahadana Man Nishtaraka Madbhagya Madananda Namostute. So with that prayer to Srimad Bhagavatam, let's move forward. So the first and foremost, because the context that we are in is about introduction to the prayers of the personified Vedas. So tomorrow onwards, you'll have some esteemed speakers speaking on the actual prayers. But today I've been told to, just do the introduction. And the entire story can be finished in one line. Narada, Parikshit Maharaj asked something to Sukadeva Goswami, saying that how can Vedas glorify the absolute truth? So he told about a story, which had another story, which had another story, and the entire story is only one line. Narada went to Naranarayana Rishi. Naranarayana Rishi mentioned about a meeting happened in Janaloka, where they had a conversation with Sanandana Kumar, one of the Sanat Kumars, who in turn narrated how when the Lord created Vedas, actually literally glorified the Supreme Lord. Vedas are offering prayers to the Supreme Lord. So that's all the entire storyline. But the depth of lessons that we are going to learn from this is, superb, and we can always cherish them. So the first and foremost lesson that I would like to, bring into everyone's notice is even the way Srila Prabhupada has translated the title of this series, the chapter, the prayers of the personified Vedas. for us, those who are materially qualified, Vedas is book, a literature. And in English language, we will never say he, she. We will say it, that book. It is there in the library. We will never say Rig Veda, he is there in the library. We will never say that. But technically speaking, according to this title of this chapter, what we should be saying, he is there, she is there, or whatever that is. So person, when we refer holy name by our normal English, we will use, it is there, but holy name is Nam Prabhu. When we refer deities by materialistic definition, we will say it is there, but according to spiritual definition, we say he is there, they are there, their lordship. So it's very interesting that how this process of Krishna consciousness is very scientific to educate us that everything is Chetna, everything is conscious. The knowledge, the process, the holy name, the service, the devotees, the relationships, nothing is, nothing is jad. Everything is conscious. Now, in that conscious, there are two aspects, personal and impersonal. So the challenge that Parikshit Maharaj had here was to explain or to understand how come Vedas could glorify Brahman, how come Vedas could glorify impersonal aspect of the Supreme Lord, and how come Vedas did these prayers. I couldn't comprehend this. Because that which is beyond materialistic conception, that which is divine, that which is spiritual, to connect with them, to have a perspectives towards them, we need to have an underlying education. So today, the preparation for your series is that only. We need to prepare ourselves so that we can appreciate the personified Vedas. So I want to, sincerely say that one of the important learnings that Srila Prabhupada taught, which is to counter our materialistic learning, is to educate us that all spiritual, anything connected to spirituality has got consciousness and it is a person. That is why Bhagavatam, Bhagavan, Vigraha, Nam, Dham, Vaishnava, or anything that are connected to, that is why in another place Prabhupada mentions, all this paraphernalia are representative of Balaram. So from that perspective, we offer our respectful obeisances to this wonderful paraphernalia of the Supreme Lord. I just want to bring it as a mention. That is why that is when we will be able to connect with them. I had a very senior devotee in my early days in Srirangam. His name is Dayal Govinda Prabhu. He's still there. So he taught me this, or I have learned this from him. In his house, the way he used to keep all Srila Prabhupada's books or all Vedic literature is that the way we worship the deities. Not in a manner that, we will not be able to access them. He says, like the way we decorate the, books in the altar, the deities in the altar, he maintains the book spick and span. Doesn't mean that he don't read them. He read them. He's a voracious, regular reader. So he has every book of him. He would have covered them with a cloth, and every day he worships them, and he also reads them. So one day when I asked him, he explained this to me. He said that we, because of our impersonal understanding of this whole world, because of our extended association of impersonalists, we think everything impersonal and everything as non-conscious, a vastu. But Srimad Bhagavatam and this Vedic literature are personified servants, personified companions, personified associates of the Supreme Lord. So we are supposed to respect them. So when we read them also, the way we hold them, the way we handle with them, as well as in terms of maintaining them. And since then, I was definitely conscious, because many a times I've seen devotees keeping their own books in a very terrible state. That प्रभु जी भक्ति तो है, लेकिन भगवत गीता के हालत देखेगा, cover निकला हुआ and फटा हुआ. So which tells us we are definitely not yet fully understood that this is also a person Bhagavatam, person Veda, personified Veda. So he has taken a short form of a book, but actually he is personified. So I just want to give that perspective. Then only we'll understand, or then only we will understand, when they are offering prayers, who are they? So with that, as a first reflection, I want to talk about Vedas as a general perspective. During the lockdown, I gave a lecture series on the tree of Vedic literature. It was a 10-day lecture series. We did discuss about elaborately what is Veda, what is Upaveda, what is Vedanta, what is Upanishads, what is Aranyakas, what is this. So several things that we discussed. We are not going to do that depth today, but I just want to give a snapshot on Vedas and how come Vedas are, or what comes under the classification of Vedas. And eventually, when Vedas are offering their prayers, so you draw some perspective. There's a wonderful purports that are shared as a part of the 10th canto, 87th chapter. We'll touch base on a couple of them. So the first and foremost thing that we need to understand in Vedas is this is Apaurushaya. Apaurushaya means Purusha means human being, or Manushya, Purusha, person. Apaurushaya, it means that which is not invented, founded, anywhere connected with a materialistic man or a human being, that which is untouched by the people in this material world, that content is Vedas. So the entire thing, because the reference that we always use for Vedas is many, different times we use this word Vedic literature in a much more colloquial sense. But if you understand the entire tree of Vedic literature, you'll appreciate them. What is Vedas? What is different components of Vedas? So I may draw some technical words today just to help all of us to get to the context, and also to understand how the Vedas are glorifying, and how each and every word, every sentence, everything in Vedas are going to be appreciated if they are in the right hands. Otherwise, people will say that I don't understand, so they cannot be true. Because the modern ideology is such that what you don't understand, you don't believe it exists. And what you don't believe in exists, you mock about it. And when you mock about it, you make others believe that we are all true, and eventually it becomes extinct. In the sense, if I learn to humiliate, mock at some things because I don't believe or I don't understand, then the net result is that it slowly leave the humanity, and eventually we are bereft of that association. So Apaurushaya is something to understand, as Rupa Goswami mentions, Sruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatrim Vidim Vina Aikantikir Harir Bhaktir Utpada Yeva Kalpate. He says that the purpose of Sruti Smriti Purana Pancharatra is to help us develop spiritual consciousness. So what happens is that unless and otherwise we learn the Vedic literature with the help of Vedic literature, and with the help of person who learned the Vedic literature, probably we will never go anywhere. So from that standpoint, Vedas being an Apaurushaya, it has to be imparted by a person who is not part of this creation, who is the creator. So originally, so long as the Lord existed, that much time the Vedas are also existing. So Vedas are considered like mother, and mother always describes about all the relationships of this world and educates the son. So from that perspective, Vedas eventually teaches us who is our eternal father, who is Krishna. But between the cup and the lip, there is always a gap. Similarly, based on this basic definition, to actually come to that understanding, there are a lot of in-between gaps to be filled, which gets unfortunately filled by so-called materialists. But Srila Prabhupada came and did a wonderful job of cleaning that mess in between and filling them with proper spiritual science, which is helping us to slowly develop that understanding that Vedas are our mother, Krishna is our father. We are, as a dutiful servant and children, supposed to be serving the Supreme Lord as directed by our mother. So, as an Apaurishaya, so how this knowledge got imparted? This was not written. This was not, printed. Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye. So, before knowing what is there in the Veda, we should know what is Veda. So, it is Krishna who taught this knowledge to Brahma heart to heart. And several times we have, we have heard that how Brahma is, every time when he is doing the creation, he has to be given information how to, do the creation, and every time he is imparting knowledge. So Brahma has got a, daily stint or regular stint with Krishna, because every day of Brahma, if it is getting over, in the night of Brahma, there is a small pralaya. And after every small pralaya, when he has to create, he has to take consultation from Krishna. Krishna educates him, imparts with this knowledge, and then everything goes about. And those knowledge are actually imparted heart to heart in a very interesting, powerful, latest or modern technology, who has to take begging from them, because the technology that they had to, transmit the knowledge from one heart to another, I don't think such a methodology is still available yet for normal man's use. So what happens is that this Apaurishaya, this knowledge, which is eliminating us from those 4 defects of human being, imperfect senses, often comes under illusion, we make mistakes and cheating propensity. It shields us from these 4 defects. And when these 4 defects are shielded, then we are getting that knowledge which is eternal, which is not man-made, and eventually this knowledge is passed down through disciplic succession. And this disciplic succession, when they carry this knowledge, the sanctity of the knowledge is preserved, but the relevance of the knowledge is always updated to the context. When the knowledge that was there several thousand years before, the time, place, circumstances, and other information that was available at that point in time is not the same as that is available currently. So what Srila Prabhupada is imparting is the same knowledge, but customized and made it relevant to our current context. When I say relevance, it is about the example, explanation, as well as certain details that are explained with the immediate past episodes with examples, so that we will be able to correlate. Assume that Srila Prabhupada has given, and unless and otherwise somebody reads and understand Rig Veda 3 times, you cannot be given first initiation. Probably we would have, finished our spiritual lives agenda a long time back. Now, if reading Bhagavad Gita 3 times is we having a nightmare, so reading Rig Veda 3 times would have been a slight of a challenge. So from that standpoint, it is extremely important that we need to understand the context that Srila Prabhupada not only gave that spiritual knowledge, but made it relevant to the current context. So Veda, and Veda's knowledge is Apaurishaya, and that Apaurishaya knowledge, Apaurishaya Tvam, is maintained by the disciplic succession. That is why we always say that any knowledge, avaishtava mukodgirnam putam harikatamritam shravanam naiva kartavyam sarpa uchishta yatapayaha. So as much as possible, or to a larger extent, the Shastra explains that we need to ensure that we don't receive knowledge from a non-bona fide, non-parampara source. And if you receive such a knowledge, it is like a milk touched by the lips of a serpent. So the intent is that I take the Apaurishaya in a disciplic succession, and it eventually reaches down to us. And in what all forms it reaches down to us? It reaches down to us in a very interesting forms. Originally, Vedas are Shruti. Shruti, it is only heard. That which is heard, and this always never written. Because in the previous yugas, there were always several contexts, several, people were very well mannered, well cultured, well equipped in terms of their intelligence. They could remember things. They had less distractions or less, materialistic acumen. So they were able to hear, remember, and function. So when Shruti, as you hear, you keep hearing. This was the scenario until Kali Yuga began. When Kali Yuga began, the challenge came up where people are not able to remember. People are not able to function based on remembrance. So, because Kalau Shudra Sambhava, in Kali Yuga, we have, more than the content and consciousness, we are worried about the presentation and appearance. In today's world, if you go to a dinner party, more than what you eat, everybody is wondering how you eat, how you hold your spoon, how you keep your napkin, how are you sitting. So the whole world is very, very, very much interested in being conscious about what are we doing, then how are we doing, or what is the real purpose of it. So from that perspective, in Kali Yuga, when we are predominated by Shudras, so there was a need of preparing the Vedic knowledge into a written form. So that's when Veda Vyas did this, and Vyasa means compiler, editor. He is a Shakti Avesh avatar of the Supreme Lord, and he classified, analyzed, compiled, and eventually taught. That is why he is considered as literary incarnation of the Supreme Lord. So he did not just write. So he classified them, and he analyzed them. He kind of compiled them, and he also taught them. So as Vyasa, the definition, he made sure that what that is Apaurishaya is presented into a very organic and a very structured manner, so that we receive that knowledge and we are able to process them further. So Veda Vyas divided the Vedas into 4 parts: Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, Atharva Veda. So when he divided the Veda as Rig Veda, originally Rig Veda was only Veda, but then it got divided into 4. So Rig Veda, the word Rig means prayers. So prayers, which is with chanting, with several chants, several hymns. And Yajur Veda means that which is pronounced. Yajur means murmuring, that which is pronounced. So all the mantras for sacrifices comes from Yajur Veda. And Sama Veda, Sama means meterical verses, where meters are their songs and some poetical compositions in the form of songs. And definitely Atharva means etc. All that which is not compiled in the previous things are all put in one basket. That is called Atharva Veda. The Prabhupada writes in Bhagavad Gita, one of the purports, about some of these points. And so with this 4 classification, we should also understand our Varna. Brahma Janati, Brahmana, Janmana, Jayate, Shudra. A person is classified as a Shudra if he is not studying Vedic literature. By definition, we are all Shudras by birth, according to Kali Yuga's standard. But samskara iti Brahmana. Janmana Jayate Shudra, samskara iti Brahmana. And only when we are trying to learn, perform some samskaras, we get qualified. Yeah, Brahma Janati, when you get to know the Brahman, the knowledge of the self, knowledge of the absolute truth, then we become a Brahmana. Otherwise, we continue to remain as those who are into the 3rd or 4th class men. So according to the Vedic literature, or according to the science of spirituality, we need to understand that Vedas, understanding our need, has got everything, whether it is to do with rituals, whether it is to do with our lifestyle, our devotional journey, or our interactions, relationships. Yeah, all the details are there. They are all classified into different things. So with this overview, because this Vedas are further have got 6 aspects which are called Vedangas. I will just say those 6 aspects and then switch to the next reflection. So the Vedas are talked about 6 different aspects. Number 1 is called Siksha. Number 2 is called Vyakarna. Number 3 is called Nirukti. Number 4 is called Chandas. Number 5 is called Jyotis. Number 6 is called Kalpa. So Vedas generally talks about these 6 different angas. The first anga is called Siksha. Siksha means phonetic science. That which is, by the words that we chant. There is a reason why I'm saying all these things. So please, try to follow, even though it is apparently little technical. So Siksha means a phonetical science, where just by sound, the way the sound is utilized. If you have read the first verse of 10th canto, 87th chapter, you'll have a clue of where I'm coming from, because there are several things that are mentioned by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Unless and otherwise somebody is an expert in Sanskrit, people may not be able to relate to that. But I just thought I will try to give some background to help us appreciate what Vedas are and how Vedas are structured. So, Siksha is about phonetical science. Vyakarana is about grammar. Nirukti is about some giving context and conclusive meaning of a specific portion. Chandas is meter. Jyotis is, Jyotish Shastra, astrology, astronomy. And Kalpa is about rituals. Each of them has got their own details. So this is how Veda has got these 6 different angas. So now Sukadeva Goswami is asked by Parikshit Maharaj. Parikshit Maharaj is asking, how can the Vedas directly describe the supreme absolute truth who cannot be described in words? Vedas are limited to describing the qualities of material nature, but the supreme is devoid of these qualities, being transcendental to all material manifestations and their curses. So this is Parikshit Maharaj's question. How is it possible a Veda could glorify Krishna? Because the perspective here is that Vedas by design not talk about only the core aspect of bhakti. That has to be, sieved, searched, dived, and extracted out. But by details, Vedas are dealing with very gross things. By details in a larger macro sense, That is why when Narada Muni met Vyasadeva, first canto, 5th chapter, Narada Muni was very upset with Vyasadeva. Narada Muni said, what have you done, my dear? You have classified so many things, you have organized so many things, you have compiled so many things, but you have done some futile efforts. You have done some futile efforts because you have not done the real purpose of human form of life, which is to glorify the Supreme Lord. So what does that actually mean? Until and otherwise, Vyasadeva had to take a step forward in giving Vyakhyana, explanation and commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. Everything were cryptic. So long as they were cryptic, this could be interpreted by anyone in any form for any reason, and this will never directly be attributed to bhakti. So my point here is that there is a reason why we need an acharya to give us explanation and purport. So up till now, whatever I have said, I'll once again just summarize as a second reflection. We spoke about what is Veda. We spoke about how Veda is Apaurushaya. We spoke about how Apaurushaya Veda has to be received in the form of a disciplic succession, and how we spoke Veda shields us from the 4 types of mistakes, and how Vedas are classified into Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva. Rig being prayers, Yajur being murmuring, and Sama being songs, and Atharva means all the other things. That's how the Vedas would be structured there. And these Vedas that are structured has got 6 Angas, and they are called Vedangas. And those Vedangas, we spoke about how from Siksha to Kalpa, each of them are dealing with certain things. And this Vedangas and Vedas all put together as a cluster is something very, very, from a macro level, deals in a very cryptic manner. So Vyasadeva had to go through them, classify them, analyze them, and until before he gave a commentary to Vedanta Sutra, all he did was just compile of information for which Narada Muni accused him. The reason was Vyasadeva expressed his displeasure or dissatisfaction that I am not getting properly motivated. So can you please help me understand this? So that's when Narada Muni instructed on the science of spirituality. So the conclusion of second reflection is, unless and until we have an expert person who can use the sword of knowledge nicely, our cataract or our vision impairing will not get cured. Let me repeat. If knowledge is a sword, it needs to be in the right hand for the person to use the sword to perform the necessary operation. If we say operation on a patient is done using several surgical apparatus, suppose if we are supplied with those surgical apparatus, will we be able to do the operation? No. Even though the operation is to be done using those surgical knives and surgical things, we need an expert person behind those surgical things to properly articulate, properly use them. Otherwise, it will only be a catastrophe. Similarly, Veda being a knowledge, Veda being clean up, knowledge, Apaurushaya knowledge, need a very highly qualified, bona fide person relevant to the current context. That is why at every point in time, we need a living acharya who come and imparts the same knowledge that the previous acharyas had given, but giving to the current context. In the purport to the first shloka of this chapter, wonderfully the devotees, disciples of Srila Prabhupada have compiled what Sridhara Swami is praying what Viswanatha Chakravarti Thakur is praying and how they are praying. The reason is Vedas are going to themselves pray. Now we are going to explain the prayers of Vedas. So पहले हम वेदा क्या है मालूम नहीं है, तो prayers of Vedas तो दूर दूर की बात है, और उससे भी दूर की बात है कि हम क्या कर रहे हैं. There is a saying in Tamil, இரும்பு அடிக்கிற இடத்துல ஈக்கு என்ன வேலை. It means जहां लोहे को मारते हैं वहां flies, what are they doing there? Because you're, or you can also say where the goldsmith is there, so where a person who doesn't have money, what does he have to do there? Similarly, what do I am doing here in this assembly? That's what Viswanatha Chakravarti Thakur is saying. I'll tell you I'll just read that portion. So beautiful. He says, the saintly devotees may laugh at me for becoming a jewel merchant, though I know nothing about precious jewel, but I feel no shame, for at least I may entertain them. So Viswanatha Chakravarti Thakur is saying, we are discussing about glorification of Vedas, glorification towards the Supreme Lord. But what is there to do with me? Why Ram Giridhar is giving this class? So what is Viswanatha Chakravarti Thakur saying? Yes, we all know Ram Giridhar does not know anything, but at least he is entertaining some group of 10 people. See, Navi Mumbai se koi joker aaya, kuch to bak raha hai. So there are, like, it's you go for a show, like, circus show or some show where we sit and entertain some, humor. So this is another humor. So that's what Viswanatha Chakravarti Thakur's mood is. If he is saying that, who am I to even say anything? Then he further says, though I have no wisdom, devotion, or detachment, I am still greedy to take the philosopher's stone of Vedas prayers from the fortress in which it is being kept. So the entire mindset is to explain that this Vedic knowledge is to be dealt by highly qualified, set of people. So we will directly jump to Vedanta Sutra now, because Vedas on its own is cryptic. Vedas on its own has got several chunks of information, which are, some are material, some are transactional, some are ritual, some are purely addressed to some particular sections of society with a specific consciousness level. But still, in all of them, there is an underlying, information, which is Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We are not this body, spirit, soul. And our duty is to eventually develop loving relationship with the Supreme Lord. This science, nowhere in the Vedas it is explicitly stated. So for the Vedas to state it, we need several able men. And that's when several paramparas came up. So what happened was, there were six systems of Vedic philosophy. Oh my God, so I'm going more technical again. So I'll not go there. But the 6 systems, the last one is done by Vyasa, which is called Vedanta. And after doing Vedanta, Vedanta means culmination of all the Vedas. What Vyasadeva did is, he wrote a commentary on Vedanta, which is called Sutra. And the Vedanta Sutra is the commentary on Vedanta. And that commentary has been given by more than this. On Vedanta Sutra, there are several people who wrote further commentaries. And one was Shankaracharya, and he gave his Bhashya to the Vedanta Sutra. And Shankaracharya, when he gave his Bhashya's name is called Saririka Bhashya. But Saririka Bhashya is one impersonal commentary to the Vedanta Sutra. Vedanta is end of Veda. Veda Anta, end of all the Vedic knowledge. Vedanta Sutra is a formula sutra on all the Vedas or Vedantas. And Bhashya is commentaries on the Vedanta Sutra. That's when the rasa of Vedas are coming out. Till that point in time, all that we have is only technical information. It is like I am giving civil engineering knowledge about how to construct a flyover. which material, which comma, which this, which design, so many informations. It is not relevant for general mass. General mass need make a nice flyover so that we can ride our car on that. Maybe some civil engineer who is doing the construction work may be needing about soil test, the kind of metal, the kind of steel, the kind of cement, the kind of structure, the kind of height, the kind of various things. Those informations are relevant. But how does it matter for the general mass? That is the allegation of Narada Muni to Vedavyas. ये सारे classification तुमने बना तो दिए, but why? What is the purpose? You have to explain that. Vedaischa sarvair ahameva vedyo vedanta krit vedavit eva chaham. Assume that you have constructed a wonderful flyover, spending 200 crores, and you decide to do rooftop, plantation on that. That's not why the flyover was made. The flyover was made to regulate the traffic, to facilitate the people to move around peacefully. And I made all the flyovers very nicely. And I will do what? I will fill with sand and may do some rooftop plantation, and I will make sabji from there. That's not why it was made. So that's why Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Vedaischa sarvai ahameva vidyo. By doing all these studies, by doing all these sessions, if Krishna is not understood, if the purpose of existence is not understood, if you do not know who we are, then what will happen? Srama eva hi kevalam dharmasya anustitah pumsa visvakshena katasuyah matat pada yadiratim shrama eva hi kevalam. Simply waste of time. That is why, what is the purpose of dharma? What is the purpose of Veda? Visvakshena katasuyah. So that Visvakshena katasuyah, glorifying about the Supreme Lord, the purpose of this Vedic literature is explained by these Bhashyakaras. And there are two classifications. Saririka Bhashya by Sankaracharya, they went by glorifying impersonalism. But on the personalism, we have Ramanujacharya, we have Madhvacharya, and we have even wonderful, personalism, personal Bhashyas, which explains the personalist approach of Srimad, personalist approach of the Vedanta Sutras. And that's when we get Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the natural commentary to Vedanta Sutra, which talks about the real purpose of why this entire bridge was made. What is the purpose of this knowledge? So this is the substance of my second reflection to the whole context. Now the third reflection, and probably the last one to this, introduction to the prayers by Vedas, is that as it is explained in this particular purport, I was only dealing with the, the first purport, and there are a few other more that you can. It's only more details that are there. It is explained that the purport writes, I'll just read that portion. If the wind of indiscretion, my failure to acknowledge my lowly position, threatens to knock me down, then while writing this commentary, I must hold on to the effulgent pillars of the feet of Sridhara Swami, Sanatana Goswami, and Lord Sri Krishna. This is what Visvanatha Chakravarti Thakura says. The reason he is building this up is Vedas are themselves going to offer their prayers to the Supreme Lord. And if you see Chaitanya Charitamrita, if you see every Vedic literature, you will see one commonality wherein it always starts with invocation, it always starts with acknowledgement, it always starts with Saranagati, it always starts with repeatedly. Every chapter of Chaitanya Charitamrita, beginning and the end, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami glorifies all the 6 Goswamis and try to say that I don't have personal my qualification to say anything on this. So please accept my humble service in the humble state of mind that I'm offering. So Visvanatha Chakravarti Thakura submits this, and then after stating his submission, he is trying to explain the whole commentary that he want to give. So Sridhara Swami analyzes as per another purport. So there are more some technicalities where I will just read that portion. Sridhar Swami elaborately analyzes this problem in terms of traditional discipline of Sanskrit poetics. So we should consider that words have three kinds of expressive capacities and shabdavrittis. These are the different ways a words refers to its meaning, distinguished as mukhya vritti, lakshana vritti, and gauna vritti. So I will encourage you all to read further, but I just want to say that typically when you define Vedic words are expressed in mukhya vritti. Mukhya vritti means the purpose of that word. So many times the purpose of the word are directly explained. Krishna, Rama, Govinda, Mukunda, Murari. So it is directly refers to the Supreme Lord, direct reference. And there are also certain direct statements, about cow, about animals, about people, Atma. So several things that are directly. It's called Mukhya Vritti. And second is there are Lakshana Vritti. Lakshana Vritti meaning that which has got some additional explanation needed. It may not be direct. The literal meaning of them will be irrelevant. Like for example, all the cowherds are assembled in Ganga. So all the cowherds assembled in Ganga means all the cowherds are assembled on the banks of Ganga. But generally by the words, it is not, you should not take it in the literal sense. It means, so that is why it's all Lakshana Vritti. Somebody needs to explain or articulate them. And the third is called Gauna Vritti, which is about the speciality. Some additional, relationships needs to be enhanced and explained. The reason in this purport it is explained here is that Parikshit Maharaj's question was, how come Vedas, without the perspective of personalism, without the detailing of, because as I said, Veda is cryptic in general sense, without all these things, how did they manage to glorify the superlative, Supreme Lord? Because the context that you are in, by this time, Parikshit Maharaj has already heard Krishna's appearance, Krishna's beauty, Rasa Leela, Vrindavan Vasi's interactions. So many personal things of Krishna he heard. He couldn't comprehend. How come such a dry, cryptic, personified Veda could actually glorify Sham Sundar? Even to glorify, Brahman, how they can do that? Because Brahman is attributeless and the Supreme Lord is full of attributes. And can Veda be able to do justice to the whole thing? So that is where this whole, chapter is beginning where, and then Sukadeva Goswami is explaining. Sukadeva Goswami is explaining that, that's when he is revealing this whole storyline. How did this Veda's prayers were actually shared by the Supreme Lord? So the nested loop that I said, Narada Muni went and asked Naranarayana Rishi. Naranarayana Rishi explained about his understanding of the story, where in Janakaloka, the assembled members learned from the Sanandana Kumar, who in turn narrated about the conversation between the personified Vedas vis-a-vis the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Sukadeva Goswami is trying to impart that this science of Vedic knowledge, whilst the Vedas personified or eternally existing, so they acknowledge, they glorify the Supreme Lord in their own way, but we need an able, wonderful, qualified person, living person to reach that to us, and that is all part of Srila Prabhupada's purport. And if you go through the not the disciples of Prabhupada's purport, and also if you go through the prayers of Vedas, they have several wonderful lessons for us to learn. So Sukadeva Goswami is, trying to say that the Supreme Lord manifested the material intelligence, senses, mind, and vital air of the living entities so that they could indulge their desires for sense gratification, take repeated births to engage in fruitive activities, become elevated in future lives, and ultimately attain liberation. As we always say, that this human form of life or this life in this material world is meant not for enjoyment, but for reformation, but for purification. Sukadeva Goswami says that yes, through the process of self-realization, by going through stages, one will be able to make necessary progress in their own, personal devotional life. And when he starts to narrate the entire, storyline. So the storyline, as I mentioned, is all, properly explained over here. But as a take-home message that I want to say here is that for us to develop an understanding that are explained in the Vedic knowledge, for us to understand how Vedas are Apaurishaya, for us to get to the context of Vedanta Sutra and the understanding of Vedanta Sutra, we need to catch hold of our Parampara Acharyas. And I finally say this by explaining how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, understanding that we might need a direction, he made sure that he had all the Sampradaya Acharya's knowledge imparted to us, and he eventually gave the entire process by the conglomeration of all the Vaishnava Acharyas knowledge into Achintya Beda Beda Tattva. So I will just end with that narration, and that will be the conclusion of this chapter or this discussion, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what he did was, he took two principles from each sampradayas and eventually merged into one single sampradaya called Achintya Beda Beda Tattva, in which two principles from Ramanuja, two principles from Madhvacharya, two principles from Vishnu Swami, two principles from Nimbarka are put together, and eventually all these principles are strung together with only one thread, which is the holy name of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So Mahaprabhu Sankirtan mission, somehow or other, right from the beginning, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not show any great interest in Vedas and Vedanta Sutras when he was in Varanasi and all the other Mayavadi sannyasis were assembled. So he kept himself outside and trying to observe them. But finally, when the opportune moment came, he also explained and also gave a perspective on how this Vedic knowledge needs to be embraced. So with the help of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Achintya Beda Beda Tattva, so we are also blessed and fortunate and very highly shielded from various other cryptic information. And Prabhupada gave not just the fruit, Prabhupada gave the fruit juice, not just gave, he poured in the glass, he kept in front of our mouth. We have to just sip and drink it. And that also we have several people encouraging and helping us do this. So I'm sure that as you churn this more, you will be able to drink more and more nectar of this Vedic literature. And this wonderful purports in this by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada have also been very erudite, and some of them are very technical. So I will leave it to the future speakers to articulate on them. And as I said, I would conclude the session with as much incompleteness as it is needed, and will request the future speakers to do the remaining justice. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanande, Hare Hare Bol. Are there any questions or comments or any perspectives or anything that I have missed? So you can please point it out.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes,
can I ask Prabhu?
Sure, go ahead.
Prabhuji, I was reading, like I might not have read so much of Srimad Bhagavatam, but Bhagavad Gita introduction, last in the introduction, Gita Mahatmya part number 7, it is written like Eka Shastram Devaki Putra Gitam, and then he writes that Eki Putra means
Eko Devo Devaki Putra Deva.
And last the mantra he told about Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So instead of reading all these Vedas, Prabhupada told, so we can follow these three, and when our intelligence is better, we can read Srimad Bhagavatam and go further. Prabhuji, that was my question. I mean, generally people, the whole lifetime, Bhagavad Gita, then Srimad Bhagavatam, and then they can slowly go to Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Wonderful. So basically it is like this. Okay, I would definitely, probably, if you're interested in knowing the science of this, I will share the lecture series. We did a very elaborate study on this. But what Srila Prabhupada did was, Srila Prabhupada gave 4 books: Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nectar of Devotion. So one is Veda, one is Upanishad, one is Bhakti, 4th is Code of Conduct. Bhagavad Gita is actually part of Gita Upanishad. Because what happens is that in the life of sadhaka, we have 4 things. Number 1, if you say 4 pillars of this life, 1 pillar is Upanishad, 1 pillar is Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the part of the essence of Vedanta Sutra, and 1 pillar is Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is nothing but pure devotional service or love of Krishna, and 1 pillar is Nectar of Devotion, which is talking about code of conduct. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is nothing but explaining about how a Vaishnava should conduct. Other angas are, typically in the technical language, it's called Pancharatra. Pancharatra is nothing but code of conduct. And even though we classify them into Vedic literature, Pancharatra is nothing but code of conduct. It's like we go to an organization, they explain what is a code of conduct. Similarly, in Vaishnava literature, there is something called as code of conduct. So Prabhupada, what he made sure is, knowing our limitations, he just gave this framework. There's a devotee by name Atma Tattva Prabhu. He had done a book called 4 Books Are Enough. So he has dealt this entire the point that I mentioned. In fact, the Tree of Vedic Literature series was also inspired by the lecture series that I attended of him. So he has very nicely explained how these 4 books, Bhagavad Gita gives you a perspective about what are we supposed to do. Bhagavatam is giving a perspective about to whom are we supposed to do. And Chaitanya Charitamrita is explaining in terms of what are we going to get by doing that. And Nectar of Devotion gives you how do we go about doing that, conducting ourselves. So technically speaking, we need these 4 books. All smaller books of Srila Prabhupada are just the summary or extraction from these books, but mainly this is about 4. That is why our Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhava, Bhakti Sarvabhauma, Bhakti Vedanta studies are only centered around these 3. Prabhupada never wanted us to, in that sense, dive deep into anything else. Having said that, Prabhupada also said that I would encourage all my disciples to translate Vaishnavacharya's writings, and those Vaishnavacharya's writings are nothing but extrapolated version of what Srila Prabhupada has given. So Srila Prabhupada, if you see the bibliography, you would see several Upanishads and several literatures are referred by Srila Prabhupada. So from that standpoint, what we have is a very good, concise version of them. As I said in the beginning of the class, we have to go and repeatedly visit this dham, because these literatures are also a holy dham. The more and more we visit in the assembly of devotees, we get more and more enlightenment. So from that perspective, yes, Eko Shastram Devaki, Putra Gitam, Eko Devo Devaki Putra Deva. So the idea is that if we definitely stick, in the parampara, stick on to these 4, it's more than enough for us to chew. But if somebody is interested more, there's nothing wrong, because you can become a civil engineer so long as you can explain to the people that this bridge is for traveling, not for plantation. It is like I used to always say this: you buy a mobile phone, especially a costly one, an iPhone, and if you use them as a paperweight, or if you use them as a weapon to beat somebody, or if you use them as something for which it is not made, so अरे काम तो हो रहा है ना, देखो, it's very useful, but it's stupidity. I bought an iPhone. I should be using it for the purpose that I bought it for. Yeah, I bought it for showing off. So show off. So if you kept it at home and probably lakh rupiya ka phone hai, main ghar pe rakha hai sambhal ke, you bought it to show off. To be very honest, to confess, we don't need iPhone. Normal phone can also do. But in business world, we have to show off. Dekho, main CEO, I have an iPhone. So to show off, damn, you show it off. So if you keep it at home and आरती उतार के संभाल करके खराब हो जाएगा, scratch आ जाएगा, so then why do you even buy them or you use them as a paperweight? Similarly, the purpose of Vedic literature is to get enlightenment and get transformed in our lives. If transformation is not happening, Srama eva hi kevalam. Since you asked this question, I'll tell you this very small story. Once there was a man, I think I've told this before. This guy was walking on the road. On the side of the road, he saw a very funny scene. So the scene was, there were two guys. One was digging a hole, another one was closing it. Then bagal mein they were digging another hole, then they were closing it. And third, they were digging a hole and closing it. So this guy was curious, Baba, it's such a hot sun. तुम लोग क्या बेवकूफ जैसा ऐसा काम क्यों कर रहे हो? What is the purpose of this? He was so curious, went to them and asked, what are you guys up to? They said, sir, dekho sir, we are government servants. We have been 3 people assigned for, sowing the seed on the side of the road so that tomorrow trees can come. So one person's job is to dig a hole. Second person's job is to put the seed. Third person's job is to close it. The person putting the seed is on leave today. So why should we not work? Hamara tankhwah milna chahiye. So we are doing our work. So what it is called? Srama evagi kevalam. Simply waste of time. So that is what will happen if you read the entire Vedic literature and come and tell how God does not exist. As we always say, some other religious beliefs people buy Bhagavad Gita to read Bhagavad Gita, to find faults in Bhagavad Gita or find arguments in Bhagavad Gita to disprove how God doesn't exist or to prove how their religious texts are great. So this is stupidity par excellence, and we should not fall prey to such scenario. Okay, bro. Any other comments, questions, thoughts, reflections?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much for updating us with a lot of knowledge, and it was very informational. And definitely, Prabhu, you are not entertaining us; you are enriching us with this entire discourse. And definitely, we would like to have you the next time on a Friday to churn some of the part of the lectures and prayers. What will be left by Anuttama Prabhu. I had one question, Prabhu, and this is coming in the 87th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto. So one of the principal questions is the entire 10th canto is personal, and you mentioned this, that we should not see Vedas as impersonal, we should see them as personal prayers. But one of the questions that is running on my mind is, Parikshit Maharaj has heard so nectarian personal pastime right from birth of Krishna to the Dwaraka pastimes, and suddenly this is like an abrupt spike where he's asking about how is he mentioning about the Vedas, and then how mind can conjure up such prayers, and that is question number one. So from a chronology perspective, how is this question coming? Is there any logical sense to that? Question two is, a part of that I get a solace when I read across the chapter. In the end, Narad Muni comes and visits Vyasdev. At the end of the chapter, it's mentioned that he raised. So is it like a precursor, like a prelude to the first canto, where Narada Muni comes, or is it a separate visit in itself? So I'm not very clear about that. So these are the two questions that I have.
Class. To answer your first question, the first purport in the 87th chapter, I'll read a portion which will explain you, why this whole context even came up. So this is the at the end of the preceding chapter. This is from the first purport, 1087.1. At the end of the preceding chapter, Sukadeva Goswami told Parikshit Maharaj something. Thus, O king, the personality of Godhead, who is the devotee of his own devotees, stayed for some time with his two great devotees, teaching them how perfect saints behave. Then he returned to Dwaraka. In this verse, the word Sanmargam can be understood in at least 3 ways. Then the purport goes, how are those 3 ways are there? This is how I understood. Probably there are no other elevated souls who would have got a better understanding. So it says in the first, Sat is taken to the mean devotee of the Supreme Lord, and thus Sanmarga means the path of Bhakti Yoga, devotional service. In the second, with Sat meaning a seeker of transcendental knowledge, Sanmarga means the philosophical path of knowledge, which has impersonal Brahman as its object. And in the third, with Sat referring to the transcendental sound of the Vedas, Sanmarga means the process of following Vedic injunctions. Both the second and the third of these interpretations of Sanmargam lead to the question of how the Vedas can describe the absolute truth. So Parikshit Maharaj, being an intelligent person, when he heard this Sanmargam, so he started to so the intent of this is naturally to churn, and he also wanted to dive deep. How this is possible? How Sanmargam means, it could as well means following the Vedic procedure. How Vedic procedure? Because we have already crossed. You are right. We have gone past. For us to understand Krishna, we have to go past knowledge. 14th chapter of Nectar of Devotion, first paragraph. Time and again we have read that. Knowledge and renunciation helps a person to come up to only particular stage in devotion, beyond which what is required is sentiment and sincerity. So if sentiment and sincerity is only required, how come we have got into this? That is also, maybe he's contemplating, maybe he's reading between lines, maybe he's trying to, churn this. So Sridhara Swami elaborately analyzes this problem to, take it further. So our acharyas have taken care of all classification of devotees, and so do Srimad Bhagavatam, just to intellectually, enrich, as well as to give a perspective that just don't get hung up, because all that Shankaracharya did was, he did word jugglery. He kept on playing with his words, which later all the acharyas came and whipped on them and gave a perspective and said, don't just hang up on the word. It is about the purpose, meaning, relationship, perspective, and the Leela associated with that. That is why Krishna is a person. So to get that into everybody's head, so probably this was explained. And maybe the chronological part of it could be, what you said is true. But for the first aspect of it, my understanding is Sukadeva Goswami got intrigued, saying that how this is, relevant to this context. Making sense, Haridas?
Yeah, bro. Because somewhere this conversation of Narada asking this Narayana Rishi and his subjects seems like it strikes a chord with what Parikshit Maharaj's also thought process is. And this Sanmarga, because somewhere in the purport, as you said, because I didn't read the first verses purport, because finally the saints who asked to Sanananda, they are also going to that destination, going to that place where this entire thing is mentioned about. One other sub question I had, if we have the time, the other sub question that we have is that somewhere in the prayers, when Mahavishnu or he's lying down, or Narayana is lying down, the Vedas come up and like an alarm clock, they're saying all these prayers, saying that you please wake up and start creation. And I mean, it sounds, the Lord is all omnipotent. He knows when it is right. And we speak that he's Apaurishaya, as he said. Is it a clockwork role of the Vedas to do this? Or is it, if you think from Vedas as a person, what is their motivation to do the prayers? I mean, is it just glorification? Or is it a clockwork arrangement for them to start the creation? Or is it something else? Just trying to understand the motive of prayers of Vedas.
My understanding is mother reaching out to father to enable them to function. Because Vedas as mother, because every time when Brahma had to create, Krishna has to impart the knowledge. The knowledge is mother, and imparting person is father. So Vedas are requesting, I am a mother. I am the one who has, who know things, but I can't function on my own unless I have father who enables me. My understanding is when Chanura and Mushtika, or not Chanura Mushtika, sorry, there were two demons who stole the Veda, and then the Lord has to come as Hayagriva.
Madhu and Kaitaba.
Sorry?
Madhu Kaitaba.
Madhu Kaitaba, thank you. So when Madhu and Kaitaba did that, so the problem is that we always needed mother into the ecosystem. Otherwise, this will become a headless society. So as much as father is important, without mother, this will become null and void. And what we know is about Buddha incarnation is exactly that. But if you remove Vedas from the equation and keep everything intact, it is Buddha. How dry it is, how impersonal it is, how meaningless it is. Even though Buddha is Krishna himself, there is no lesson beyond non-violence we could learn from there. Of course, to also learn that even if Krishna comes and says Veda don't exist, don't accept Krishna. That's the kind of message that we get as Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Of course, from a normal worldly perspective, Buddha gave several lessons. We will not discount on that. But if you just remove Veda from the entire equation and retain everything else, you will know Buddha's story. Interaction, taking care, ahimsa, love, care, and so many things. But it's so dry, shunyavad. So that is how Veda, contribute there. So by Veda being there, she's a mother, but she needs enablement from the Supreme Lord, because the purpose of Veda is to glorify the Lord. And by Veda making sure to offer a prayer, make sure that please don't, like Maya. When Maya with Krishna, she is Krishna's servant. But Maya, when she is in the form of Durga Devi, she is the one who's whacking on our back because of our disobedience to the Supreme Lord. So the same person doing a different function. So when Veda hide herself from the normal man's viewpoint or a arrogant person's viewpoint, she only gives a very dry experience and try to shield Krishna, so you can't see Krishna. Using Veda, you will not see Krishna. But here, by the way of Veda submitting herself to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, she is helping us to know Krishna. Does it make sense?